Okay. It's an old saying about perfect confluence, kind of like there's magical spots on Earth. I've seen magical spots on Earth, and I don't mean literally magical, but almost magical. Like I saw a fantasy forest in Yalta, which is on the Black Sea in Ukraine, where I've been in a lot of forests, and it almost felt like, a unicorn and Tinkerbell were about to fly out behind a tree. I mean, they're mystical confluences of things where there's an intersection of near perfection. I have to give credit in understanding magnetism to James Clerk Maxwell, Faraday, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, Nikola Tesla, Eric Dollard, Walter Russell, more specifically to a degree of like 70%, I have to give great thanks to ancient dead masters of logic and wisdom like Plotinus, Numenius, Proclus, Damasius, Syrianus. These were people who engaged in retroductive logic and thinking, the likes of which most people don't even... There are 4 translations of Plotinus. 2 of the translators were suicidal because it's ancient Greek metaphysical shorthand, and nobody was up to the task of doing an accurate translation of Plotinus's 9 Enneads. Even the best one, which was incomplete by Thomas Taylor, is, it doesn't even come close to the original in the ancient Greek. It's absolutely painstaking, even in the best English translations of Taylor, to understand, and it's slow reading in the ancient Greek. But the only way I've understood what magnetism is, and it's the one thing I wanted to conquer most importantly, is because the entire universe is magnetism. The only thing that defines space or topos or magnitude, all collectively, is magnetism only. Force and motion, and the conjugate, which is the dielectric, magnetodielectric conjugate geometry, which respectively forms the torus and the hyperboloid. Without ancient Greek retroductive methodology of understanding things that are nearly incomprehensible and highly ineffable, there's a word everybody should learn, ineffable, is incredibly hard, and I've spent years, and I finally got it. Finally. For many years there, actually, I thought it was at the bottom of the rabbit hole on magnetism, and it turns out there was another level, and I'd go further. There's about 5 or 6 big steps in understanding magnetism, and even though it's divinely simple, it's not simplex. Excuse me, I have that backwards. Extremely simplex, but it's not simple. Understanding this dual entity of the head and the tail of the coin that defines the magnetodielectric conjugate geometry, which necessitatively is required to understand what magnetism is, since it's not an autonomous thing. It is the expression of the loss of energy and inertia of the dielectric. In a really funny analogy I thought I would introduce in my lecture, because sometimes they help people comprehend things. Since magnetism is a dielectric field, we talk about the chicken or egg conundrum. The dielectric would be the egg, would be the chicken sitting on the eggs in the roost, or the chicken coop, and the magnetism would be the very same chicken running around the chicken coop. I mean, they're both one and the same. Human beings in our unevolved intellectual comprehension love to pigeonhole things and subdivide things. You've got all these PhD physicists who are not scientists in the true sense of the Platonic sense. They're mathematicians trying to come up with a grand unified theory. If Mother Nature were an entity, she'd be laughing at all of humanity trying to unify something that's already unified. And it's so incredibly visible. To think that these things are different things is as stupid as this dumb child thinking water is one thing, ice is another, and steam yet another. Obviously, all these things are water fundamentally. They're just different expressions in attribution, not properties, but in attribute. And gravity, there's no such thing as an autonomous field modality known as gravity. For thousands of years we suffered under the sick, deranged, mentally inept delusion that there's something called magnetic attraction, like when magnets jump towards each other. There's no such thing as magnetic attraction. A complete absurdity, completely asinine absurdity. A magnet does not have a field. It is the necessitated pressure modality of the medium itself, which exists around that point source field incommensurability, which defines the magnet. And which, further still, you have to then define magnetism. Obviously, a magnet has no quantitative difference before it becomes a magnet, so obviously then it is purely qualitative. And so you actually have to describe that. Then you actually have to define magnetism. And then you actually have to understand in 3 dimensions, what a true force vector is. Because it can't be 2-dimensional, and a polarity cannot, cannot start at a point, because you have to actually draw a line to a Cartesian point to make a point to begin a line. And Mother Nature's lines are not humans' lines. A force divergent vector is, of course, curvilinear, and it has to be necessitatively so 3-dimensional. And this, of course, is where we get gyromagnetic precession from. All of this actually defines the toroidal field geometry of magnetism, which is the dielectric field in expression of loss of inertia. Pure energy and loss, of course, defines force and motion. I mean, if we want another crude analogy, we could say that inertia or the dielectric would be a 3-pound lump of plutonium, and the magnetism would, of course, be the fusion of that. We have things backwards. We don't understand. Human beings don't understand counterspace. Charles Proteus Steinmetz said that he called them interdimensional. He called it interdimensional geometries. Well, it doesn't matter if you call it counterspace. Steinmetz called it interdimensional geometries. Dollard called it counterspace. There's actually 4 or 5 books out there on counterspace. None of them, ever try to define magnetism. And you have to understand that, really brilliant minds. I mean, the main guy who actually Einstein stole most of his stuff from, Henri Poincaré, came up with the idea of counterspace. Well, he didn't come up with the idea. He actually defined it and reified it from the sense of the Poincaré disk model of projective geometry. Without a true comprehension of counterspace, nobody could actually understand magnetism. I mean, it's absolutely impossible. It's like trying to understand the coin without actually, you're only looking at the tail side of a coin. You actually have to know the head, and then you have to know the tail, and then you have to combine the two, and obviously both together are collectively the silver of the coinage. First you see the head of an ignorant human being sees the head, and then he sees the tail, and then he becomes wiser, and then he realizes that they're both part of a coin, and then he would become wiser again analogously, and then understand that both of them are just stamped pressure formations of what is just silver. And then you have to understand what silver is. And then you completely forget about the coin. I mean, going down the rabbit hole of understanding field theory is somewhat analogous to that, but I would never be able to comprehend it without, A, standing on the shoulders of giants. And I can't stand the idiots that tell me all the time, well, Tesla figured this out, or, so-and-so figures. Like, no, they didn't. I have all their books, and I have every book ever written on magnetism, and most of the articles. Nobody ever defines magnetism, and no branch of science has ever defined a field. But by standing on their shoulders and their limited comprehensions of the entire picture of the puzzle which defines magnetism, I'm able to, finish up the complete puzzle and see exactly what's going on, and it's actually so beautiful. It's actually more beautiful than the best images I've ever seen in my life. Comprehension is the very thing that Tesla said was the greatest joy in his life, is being able to comprehend things. It's like a superpower. Not literally, but I mean being able to see what other people, if they had the wherewithal to have comprehension and wisdom, which most people don't. They care about getting rich and powerful and all this other, irrelevant pursuits that stupid-ass human beings pursue. Tesla had an elevated sensibility of wanting comprehension. He loved, and he of course applied that to his inventions. So chicken or egg analogy does not apply. I mean, it's antecedent to all of that. And nobody studies ancient Greek metaphysics, but that methodology is absolutely quintessential to understanding field theory. Everything is tied together. There's not field theory and metaphysics and everything is just one thing and different expressions of the same thing. And understanding the fundamental basis of everything, you know, you don't need to know all the goddamn minutia. The minutia is irrelevant. People are so concerned with minutia. I'm interested into the substrate. It's like someone that's studying houses and the rooms and the toilets, and I'm interested in, you know, with the wood underneath the plaster, underneath the drywall. Analogously, you know, what it comprises, you know, the nature of wood. Once you understand wood, all the other stuff like drywall and toilets and wallpaper is minutia and irrelevancy. I've always been a person that was interested in the timbers, you know, the nature of the timbers, the hardness, the you know, the density, the analogously. And this, of course, is why people say, why are you so interested in magnetism? Because magnetism is the timbers of the entire damn universe. You know, everybody else is worried about the toilets and the wallpaper and, you know, the fancy carvings. I'm not interested in any of that damn stuff. I'm interested in the timbers of the universe. You know, the fundamental foundation of everything. So people say, why are you so interested in magnetism? That's as stupid as asking someone, why are you so interested in wisdom? Why are you so interested in the fundamental basis of the entire goddamn cosmos? Well, I mean, isn't that a stupid question? Thank you for asking me. You know, I love the next person asks, why are you so interested in magnetism? It's like, think about that question. First, you'd have to understand that, you know, magnetism forms the basis of everything in the universe, all phenomena. When you understand that, then of course you then necessitatively must understand the noumena. Okay, phenomena and then noumena. We have the substrate. First we got the sock puppet, and then you have to understand the hand. I mean, there's another good analogy. It's always so great for metaphysics. People are looking at the sock puppet like a stupid little pathetic kid. Well, I'm interested in the hand underneath it. And when you understand the hand, then you're interested in what's connected to the hand, which would be, of course, up here. So you go all the way down the rabbit hole, forget the sock puppet, you study the hand, which would be the magnetism, then you understand what the hell the hand is being controlled by, which would be up here, the dielectric, the counterspace. Why must magnetism exist? Why is there loss of energy? Well, that equation is my discovery, and it's tattooed right here on the inside of my right wrist, by the way, which, interestingly enough, is a discovery I made in Plato's Republic 509D. It's buried deep in there. Of course, doesn't belong to Plato. That actually belongs to the Pythagoreans before him. A lot of people give Plato a lot of credit for a great deal of wisdom, but a lot of Plato's writings do not belong to Plato. They're rehashings of Pythagorean and Neo-Pythagorean wisdom and metaphysics. I mean, that's an absolute hardcore fact. Anyway, I could talk about magnetism like until the cows come home and nobody would listen. Half the people would fall asleep and go a lot further down the rabbit hole, but I think I might make everybody snooze, you know, like. But please, God, don't ask me why I'm interested in magnetism, because that is a really dumb question. There are no dumb questions, sir, Mr. Tattooed Fat Bald Dude. Sometimes there are dumb questions. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.